Standing in line to see the show tonight, and there's a light on, heavy glow. By the way, I tried to say I'd be there, waiting for Danny the girl is singing songs to me beneath the marquee. Overload. Still left. Car shop. Con job. Hooker. Skin that thick, she's such a little DJ. Get that quick, my streets, but not the freeway. Turn that chick to make a little leeway. Beat that Nick, but not the way that we play. Dog down. Bloodbath. Ribcage. Softail. Standing in line to see the show tonight, and there's a light on, heavy glow. By the way, I tried to say I'd be there, waiting for.
All right, welcome. We are here. It is playoff time for the St. Jude. First time it's been FedEx Cup playoff event. Chalk dirty to me. I had the intro song playing a little longer this time. Red Hot Chili Peppers, by the way. By the way, I'm going to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers in MetLife next Wednesday. So very excited about that. And yeah, hopefully we have some winnings from this weekend to allocate towards those tickets because they were kind of pricey. But I'm excited for the concert. I'm excited for this week. I'm excited for the playoffs. Only a few more big events left for this year. And then, quick down season for golf. And then the fall swing starts up pretty quickly. So, yeah, I wanted to get at least one more or two more episodes in, depending on the concert and everything going on next week. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. I know there's going to be a big DraftKings competition for the BMW. I am excited for that. Some people don't like the no cut events. I don't really mind them. I think it's fun. I think either way, it's just different kind of. You just got to play a little bit slightly different strategy, knowing that it's 4 rounds versus 2. So, yeah, last week, on the pod, we were hyping up a guy named Thomas Kim, Ju-Young Kim. We bet him outright. Check. Nailed that. He paid for the entire DFS week and more, and I'm glad he did, because not the greatest DFS week. I had 3 lineups that were solid. I had 6 of 6 lineups. Everybody had 6 of 6 lineups this week with the cup being 1 under. I had Brendan Todd pretty much locked. He ended up finishing 30 something. So decent rally from him, but he missed a 4-foot putt. He needed the 2 putt from 21 feet to make to be -2 and make the cut. No worry. And then I was literally at a bar going to the bathroom, and I looked at my phone and saw he was -2. So I had a 21-foot putt. I went to check to see where he was on the scoreboard, after the hole. And I was like, oh, he's not at -2. He must be at -3, right? Go up to -3. He's not there. Nope. He 3-putted from 21 feet to move down to -1. Cup miraculously gets chopped down to -1. Austin Smotherman, feel for the guy. It was the cut, heard around the world or whatever you want to call it. Poor guy was 125th in the FedEx Cup standings and booted out at, as a result. I think he's got immense talent. I think he's got, he hits the ball a mile. He's actually playing pretty well towards the end of the year. So he's young. I think we'll see him back on the PGA Tour. Hopefully he can keep his card in the KFT finals. But yeah, the story really is and was Tom Kim last week. And God, I don't want to be too biased, because a lot of people have, people of being on, someone first. I actually watched this guy at the US Open. So I know there was people on him before the US Open, but I saw him play at the US Open. I was watching with a friend of mine, and we were both just kind of who is this kid? And and he was just hitting unbelievable shots around the green, especially. I remember we were watching and just like, this guy's kind of a wizard around the green. And then, he finished 23rd or whatever it was. And we, he was super cheap at the Scottish Open. I rolled the dice on him big time. I mean, I just thought, why not? Right. Like if you're going to, I always think like young talent is like when the ownership is low, that's like where I like to roll the dice a little bit. I'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the board this week, because I think that applies for this week. And he just seemed, like to be a guy that, with my eyes, and obviously you can't see this in the model because he only had played a few rounds on the PGA Tour, and typically it takes a little while to like build yourself up relative to these other guys, just in terms of pure number of statistics, and like to be able to actually like correlate to them, or not correlate to them, but compare to them, excuse me. So he wasn't going to like pop in most people's models, but like, again, this was just something I was watching with a friend who I think I appreciate his opinion of sports holistically. And we were just like, he just looks like he's going to be good. And sometimes that means more than a model. And there's people, I think, that at times get a little too caught up in the model, right? Like their model says, this guy is this, and I'm playing him because he's higher than this guy. Like, right. That all like, there's nothing that possibly could go wrong, or my model can't possibly be wrong, or whatever. So I think that there's times and I use a model too, right? So, and there are guys I see like, wow, this guy's popping, I really want to play him. But you also have to be willing to be like, look, there's guys that are going to model out well, who are going to play like shit. And there's guys who are going to not model out well, who are going to play amazing. It's just a fact, right? It's just going to happen. Doug Gim, for example, 6,200 this week. He pops in a lot of people's models. I bet you he's the highest like rated 6K guy for most people's models this week. Guess what? He pops every fucking week, and he sucks. It's all about can he make a putt? And typically the answer to that is no. He doesn't suck. He's a good player. He just can't putt. That's why he's going to pop in most people's models, because a lot of people don't like wait. Like typically what people do is high on approach, high on off the tee, whatever, and scoring statistics, right? And they're like or statistics that are going to put them in the scoring position. So I think putting being one of the most variant statistics is one typically people tend to like way less. And I say all this little like spew of whatever because I heard people just kind of like saying like, oh, like Tom, and trust me, I believe I saw the statistics, right? For Ji Young Kim, he gained 12 strokes putting. So I'm going to say that right now. 12 strokes putting is absurd. To gain 12 strokes putting is out of control. But Cam Smith at the Open did the same exact thing. And when he did it, it was, oh, this guy's amazing, right? Like he's the best player, all this stuff. It wasn't like, oh, this is absurd, like that this is happening, that this guy's sinking putts. When it was Cam Smith, it was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so, he's so good and all of this and all of that. But there just seemed to be like people knocking like the way this guy was getting it done. And like, I get that he gained 12 strokes putting. Like that is an absurd statistic. But Martin Trainer gained 10 strokes putting, and he finished -3, finished in 67th place. So Ji Young Kim only gained 2 strokes more putting than Martin Trainer, and he shot 17 strokes better than him. Now here's point two. He had 12 strokes putting, again, crazy, right? He was 23rd in approach. Like people were just like 23rd in approach. He was 23rd in approach. Yes, he was 1 in putting. He was 23rd in approch, and he was top 25 in tee to green. And I saw no, I'm not going to go there. But the point I was trying to make is like, it's not like this guy wasn't putting the ball, like had the ball on a string. And he gained like 2.5 strokes tee to green on Sunday, where he shot 9 under to close a tournament as a 20-year-old and win by 5 strokes. Not 1 stroke, not 2 strokes, not 3, not 4, 5 shots. 5 shots. It wasn't even close. It was a 5-shot win. So that's where I'm just like, look, like I get the argument about, 12 strokes putting. That's absurd. All this, all that. He won by 5 shots. And guess what? He started the tournament with a quadruple bogey. So He was 24 under on his last 71 holes. And how much did that quadruple bogey blow up some of his statistics for the rest of the week? I know the answer to that because I look at that type of stuff, and the answer is a lot. Like that hole in itself skewed his statistics pretty absurdly because it was a quadruple bogey, and that's what happens sometimes. So, all part of saying that Ju-Young Kim is my boy, and nobody better come at him. Nobody comes at Ju-Young Kim, Tom Kim. He is a part of the family now, and I couldn't be happier for a guy 20 years old. Seems like he's great for the PGA Tour when the PGA Tour needs everything right now to go their way with everything going on. I don't want to talk about the LIV this week, even though there's so much shit going on with it and the LIV versus the PGA Tour stuff. There's smarter people out there to do that, or people that know that stuff better than I do. I'm going to stick to what I know. I'm going to talk about this. I've given my LIV spiel. I don't want to. If people want to ask me about it, I'll talk about it. I just don't want to waste the time here because I don't want to give it any more attention. The only thing we'll talk about is Cam Smith leaving and maybe Leishman. I don't know if I'm even going to get to him, but Cam Smith leaving because I think I like him still this week. But all of this being said, right? This week is very exciting, but I just think for the PGA Tour to have this young winner in Ju-Young Kim, 20 years old, who just seems like he's got real star power, and he speaks incredible English for somebody who's 20 years old from Korea, and that'll translate with US fans. It sucks to say that that's like a fact, like, I mean, but it's just like it's harder for fans in the US to resonate with people that that don't speak the language. It's not to say that doesn't happen. I mean, look at Hideki. Hideki's like a superstar, right? And he doesn't like speak the best English. I don't think he speaks it fluently. But again, all I'm trying to say is by speaking as good of English as he does at age 20, I think he's really going to do well in the US and with the US fans. Like he was even talking about how he really just like enjoyed hearing his name being called on Sunday. So excited for him. He seems like, again, just world-class player, 20 years old. He's won on every level, literally now, pretty much. Well, yeah, I mean, including the PGA Tour. And I'm excited to see what comes of him. So we'll talk about him a little bit this week as well in terms of where he's priced and ownership and that stuff. But that was my Ju-Young Kim. Spiel. I thought I could deserve that since I've been on the bandwagon since the US or Scottish Open, I guess, was when I officially hopped on, which again, he just seems like a guy to me who could have real star power. So leave it at that. Let's talk about the board this week. We'll run it. Well, Ju-Young will get a little more talk when we go down the board, but no, he's been hyped up enough. So this week we got, let's go range by range. It looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 golfers in the 10K and 6 in the 9K. So 13 in the 9s and 10s. Let's start there. Rory 11K. This ownership projections are decent. I didn't really go all that out, but I made sure they like added up and like filled up lineup spaces, if that made sense. I don't have the time. I used to, and there's people out there I trust now to kind of get these numbers right for me, and I can use that. But these are RotoGrinder is a great place to is one of the better places if you want to like pay for the ownership. I was talking about DGen 75. He does ownership as well. He does great projections. But if you're looking for like a site as well, RotoGrinders I think is good. And what I like about RotoGrinders is they show it every night and they show which way it's trending and how it's differentiating. And I think that's very important in looking at this type of stuff. One thing before we go into the board in terms of ownership, I just wanted to talk about. I've heard some, like, people always like talking about ownership on this type of stuff. I do too, right? I mean, that's the point of the show. It's a DFS golf show. And yeah, I mean, like, so obviously ownership like matters a lot, and I have done my own ownership projections. I'm pretty good at them. I am not the best, but I'm not the worst. I know what makes a good ownership projection though, and I know how to identify like a good one and a bad one, which I do think is important. So why am I saying all that? Why are you talking so much about ownership projections? Because there's one thing I wanted to say about them, and that was this, like, ownership projections a lot of times, right? Like when the final projection comes out, let's say Wednesday night, that ownership projection at that point in time might be exactly correct, right? So like that, when they update ownership, when all these sites update ownership for the last time on Wednesday night, at that point in time, that ownership might in fact be correct. The ownership you are seeing from these sites at that point in time, based on the data that is available to them, is showing that these are what the projections will be. Now, here's why that's important to think about. There are reasons why ownership projections frequently are off. A lot of times the number doesn't add up to 600. I think sites have started to get better at that. A lot of times, if you actually aggregate the ownership into a 6-player lineup, the 6-player lineup's total like lineup money is like 49, like 100, let's say, and they're leaving $1,000 on the table, which people don't do. So that is another way to identify them being flawed. But I've seen some of this stuff get better as more and more people have started to talk about it. But this is just one kind of another theory, I guess, I have about ownership. I have a few theories about ownership, but everybody does. I just wanted to share this one because I think it's an interesting perspective. Like a lot of times ownership projections, so back to the point at Wednesday night, right? Like when they put them up right before lock, those at that point in time might be 100% correct. Now, there's a lot of reasons, again, I think this is what I was saying, that they might, ownership might be off. Like when you go live and you check competitions locked, here's what ownership actually is. Now, there's a lot of reasons, right? But here's one reason that I just think is important to consider. So when you're looking, where's a good one? What's a good one this week? What's a good one this week? I guess just let's say these numbers were final, right? These numbers are right here, and I'm playing 150 lineups, and it's Wednesday night, and I haven't even entered a single lineup yet. So I've talked about this before in terms of like the overall market share of the competition that's really going to move ownership isn't going to come in until Wednesday night. So a lot of times, even final ownership projections haven't actually incorporated what all the sharks and sharps, a lot of people that are sharks are sharps, but they're not, they're two different terms. But the sharks are waiting until Wednesday night to put 150 lineups in until they see all of the ownership that's out there, right? So that's what's important, to know that most of the market share is being dumped in at the end. And then B, like if at lock, let's say Spieth, or like let's say Wednesday night, none of these sharks have made their lineups yet. Spieth's coming in at 10%, and a lot of the people, the shark community thinks, wow, like Jordan Spieth's at 10% owned at 9,100, coming off 8th place at the Open Championship, 10th place at the Scottish. He's finished 12th here, the 2 out of the last 3 years. Maybe he's a good guy to roll a dice on. And maybe I think he's way too under owned for his value. He's 17th. My model might not work for this exact example, but point being, so people see 10% and then people pounce, and that 10%, after all of these people have seen the correct projection on Wednesday night of 10%, have now actually moved it by Thursday morning to 12%. So just something to think about, right? Like in terms of, and it's just in terms of nitpicking, right? If it's 1 or 2%, just be careful, because a lot of times that 1 or 2% comes back to bite you, because you end up being 1 or 2% off actually in your projections. It ends up being a guy you thought might be less chalky, or ends up being chalky. It just happens a lot, right? Like there's flip-flops. So enough about that. Let's talk. I already talked about like the overall structure of the this range. 13 golfers in it. Rory being the highest price. Scotty Cam Smith or Xander, Cam Smith, Cantlay, JT, Rom, Rom. Let's stop there. So let's do 10Ks first. Smaller range, pretty loaded range. I have my theory for this week, and I looked at weather. Quick aside, I looked at weather. It's Tuesday night. Weather changes. Weather right now looks like slight PM AM advantage in my point of view, and that I'm like that means nothing to like it. Literally means nothing to me. I'm not letting this week. I'm choosing the golfers that I think are the best this week, unless the weather changes. And changes like a little bit more. It's not to the point where I'm ready to really make or break any lineups or golfers that I like. But sorry for that ADHD moment. You'll get used to those on here. But I say that because I think this is a week when I always look at a week and I how are people building? It looks like people are loving Finau, Zala, Burnsy. This range here is getting some juice. So like 8-5. I mean, that's a chalky range right there, which leads me to believe it's about 15%, which leads me to believe people are doing like a balance build, or they're grabbing one of these guys up top and then going maybe with a guy in the 9Ks or lower 9Ks, and maybe even grabbing a guy in the 8Ks as well. I think this is a week where I'm going to shove as much. This sounds crazy, right? But I'll get to why I'm going to do this. And this isn't going to be for all 100 to 150 lineups. I haven't decided how many I'm going to do yet. I think I might end up doing like 125. Honestly, 150 is just a lot. And I know I'm putting myself at a disadvantage, but I also have done extremely well with 100 and 50 before. So I'm not like, I'm like, nervous. I'm like not going to do as well as these people putting 150 lineups in. No, I'm not. So anyway, whatever I decide, I say that because I'm going to play about 50 lineups balanced because I do see a lot of value in there. But my other 50 to 75 lineups will be 2 to 3 6K golfers in the same lineup. Kyle, why would you do that? That is idiotic. You are a crazy man. Yes, and yes. All yeses to all those answers. But here's the actual reason why this week. 125 person field where top 65 and ties makes the cut. Okay, well, typically it's 150. So now there's a shrunken field or smaller field with the same amount of people making the cut, meaning what? Okay, well, now the percentage of those making the cut is going up by nothing, just by the structure of the tournament. So important to think about. Well, why does that matter, Kyle? You're crazy. You're still going 2 or 3 6K guys. Okay, well, if more players are going to make the cut, or more likely like to make the cut, then I'm more willing to roll the dice on some of these guys who are lower priced. Also, this event, the cream of the crop has rise to the top. Other than the answer last year, it's typically been a stallion. It's been like JT, it's been DJ, it's been Brooks, it's been Berger is not really stallion, but he's solid. Yeah, he's not. I don't know why I don't like Berger either, but whatever. You get the point. Good players have like risen to the top here, and this field is even better than all the fields that have ever been at this event before, because now it's the first event of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Crazy stat that I'm going to throw at you that might make you reconsider slightly. Last year, Northern Trust was the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoff, 125 person field. 5 of the 8 highest scoring golfers were in the 6K range on the DFS slate. Yeah, 5 of the 8 highest scoring golfers in the 125 tournament on DraftKings, 125 field at Northern Trust. 5 of the top 8 were in the 6Ks. This gets crazier. 2 of them were $6,000 golfers. So am I telling you to go fucking play two $6,000 golfers? Absolutely not. But what I'm telling you is in this similar structured tournament last year, and it's totally different course. Oh, I know. I'm not a fucking idiot. But in this exact type of field, a lot of 6K guys popped. And it wasn't just like 5 out of 8. Like if you actually look at the data on like Data Golf, there was a lot of 6K guys who dominated. And that happens a lot. And that also happens a lot in no cut events. Because there's just 4 guys at 6K and all they need to score for 4 rounds. They're scoring for 4 rounds. So this is different, right? I'm rolling the dice slightly on the fact that I think my guy's more likely to make the cut. So I'm more willing to play. I'm more willing to dumpster dive a little bit. I also really like the 6K range this week. I really like the 6K range this week. So let's get into the board now that I've said let's get into the board 3 times and I've gone to the 10Ks. But the 10Ks, the guys I like. But again, I haven't decided anybody. I'll tell you the guys like I decide to play if I really have decided to play them. But there's a lot of decisions I haven't made yet. So there's a lot of highlights here. I'm not playing all of these guys. I'm just not. I can't lose my fucking mind. I like a tighter player pool, like 25 to 30 players tops. Typically I do 100 lineups and 20 person player pool. But if I'm going to go to 150 this week, I'm going to try to do 25. Yeah, so like point being, I have to cut these numbers down. These highlights are like my initial leans. I mean, like, great, like nobody watches this fucking shit anyway, but just point being, I might pivot off of some of these guys. Like I will be pivoting off of some of these guys because I can't play all of them. I think Scotty's the play. I think that coming back to the US where he's better on these surfaces is great. He models out number 1 for me. And then and I want to I always say like these are peripherals, I guess you could call them. These don't like I change my model like nothing every week. Like this week I barely touched my model. Barely touched it. Because it's like first of all, I like where it's at, and I don't think like necessarily every week a model like what constitutes a great golfer changes all that much. Yes, there are courses that are out there that golfers play better and all that good stuff, but I just have this belief that in terms of modeling something out, the simpler you keep it, the more it's going to tell you. Fact. If you ever want to talk about that, hit me up. But yeah, it's just a model, a standard model I like. I don't double weigh things like off the tee and approach and then tee and then around the green, then tee to green and ball striking, because that's stupid. It's very calculated. But it's not many inputs. It's the inputs that I think are the most important, weighed the way that I think are is important to weigh them. And typically I leave around 10% every week that I'm willing to allocate other places. That's it. 10%. This week I did 0. I did 0% other place. I took the 10% that I normally like the 10% like allocated, right? Like it starts out every week where it's at that extra 100% allocated. I just have 10% I'm willing to chop out every week to allocate other places. Typically that's if a course is if a course is very long or very short. This course is pretty long. So I, theoretically I could have done that, but I didn't. I don't think it's gonna matter. So Scheffler's 1, and he looks like he's 14% owned, and he's number 1 golfer in the world. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep beating that drum, that Scheffler drum. I just think he's world class. He seems to close the deal. Rory, look, I mean, this is why he's red. First of all, I think he's going to be chalk E. I don't think he's going to be like super chalk. But this is why this is Tuesday night. We got to check these Wednesday. Like, how can you not like him? How? What is not to like about Rory other than his price tag and his ownership? I mean, that's the I guess smart like way to get yourself away from him. Like he's the highest price guy on the slate, and he's pretty highly owned. So at the same time, I mean, he's just been playing out of his fucking mind, right? And he's got a 4th here, he's got 12th here, and then 47th. That's shit. 5 at the US Open, 19 at the Travelers, 3rd at the Open. Like, I mean, he should have won the Open, but we won't get into that. I still want. I had Cam Smith, so I'm just saying that, but whatever. Xander, I don't not like Xander. I'll tell you what, 12.8%. Let's see where that number's at tomorrow, if that's real or not. I mean, if that's like 12-10, maybe he's a little more interesting. Cam Smith, 13.65 for a guy who just won the fucking Open and finished 5th here last year. Look, I'm gonna play him. And I will say he's gone. He's absolutely gone to the live. And it pains me to say, but there's no way that guy is staying. He's just, I mean, he's got so much leverage with the win at the Open Championship and being exempt from all the majors for the amount of time he is. So yeah, it's sad. He's probably the first guy I'm really sad to see go, because I think he's like actually like one of the best golfers in the world right now, and that hurts, I think, the PGA. So stinks that he's going, but I'll still probably play him this week, especially if he's 13% on. Jesus Christ. Like, what? Why? Because he's going to the live? All right. I'll fucking play him. I'm crazy. It's not really that crazy, but Cantlay. Look, I'm just saying, like, Cantlay versus Cam Smith. I'm gonna take Cam Smith. He's just playing. Yes, Cantlay's playing out of his mind too, but I just think Cam Smith at the same ownership and price, essentially. Like, I'll go Cam Smith. Like, sure. Cantlay's got decent starts here. What I also want to say though, these starts, I'm pretty sure the FedEx Cup, the St. Jude was like an invitational, and it only used to be like 80 people or 60 people. So like a lot of, like, if these guys are finishing highly, yes, important, good to note. But if you're seeing like, oh wow, like this guy finished like 40th, well 40th actually, or like 35th or whatever. I don't know what you're looking at and consider good, but just note that might actually be like, oh well, he finished 40th out of like 80 people, so it just might not be as good as you thought. So yeah, I mean, look, Cantlay's playing great. A lot of these guys up top. I mean, Rory, Scheffler, Xander, Cam Smith, and Cantlay are all playing out of their fucking skulls. JT is underpriced, but he's underpriced because of the fact that if you look like the past couple like goes in terms of like where he's modeling out of the last 3, not that great over the last major chunk of time. Yeah, he's incredible. He models out 5th for me. And oh yeah, if you're looking at these stats, which I don't bring into my model and doesn't even weigh them, so he's 5th. And then on top of that, he's also number 1 in terms of what I do is with proximities. I think it's important to like look at him like this: 125, 150 to 175 to 200. So basically, this is 125 to 200 yards in my mind, and I aggregated it out across the different and called it buckshot. I don't know why. I was just bored, I guess. But that is what this column is, and he's number 1 across all of these 3 proximities, which I think 60%. My guy Andy Lack, I think, mentioned 20% approximately for each of these buckets this week. So 60% of the approach couch coming from there. So like I care about that. It's not an end all be all, but like, okay, like he models out 5th and he's number 1 in those. So and he's 1 here. Yeah, I mean JT again, he just seems, based on the year he's having, slightly underpriced. I will say he's getting a lot of ownership as a result. People are seeing that he's underpriced and over talented. So that's going to be a tough one. The red ones are guys that like are tough, that I think are going to be chalky, that are tough for me to get off of, but I typically get off of them. It's not that hard at the end of the day. If I don't like the number that much, I'll get off of them. So I'd say for me, it's going to be the 3 best plays are Rory, Scheffler, and Cam, if you're not trying to get wild. And then I think JT is underpriced, but out of form slightly. So you're somewhat betting on him just jumping back into form, which very easily could do. Rahm is like the fairest price he's been in a long time. He's 10K and he's 13.6% owned. I mean, that's a good, like, if you're, look, there's been a lot of bad times to play Rahm, I'll tell you that. I think he's a good play this week in the regard to his price and his ownership. I don't know if I'll get there. I don't know if I'll get there, but again, I don't not like if he was like 10-8, like or 10-6, and he was 17% owned, then no, I wouldn't want to play him. But he's 10,000. He's dropped a little in price, rightfully so. He's not modeling out as well for me. I'm sure for others. I think if he went back like to 100 rounds, he'd probably be number one. But yeah, he hasn't had the greatest of years. He's still immensely talented. Fitzpatrick. I kind of like Fitzpatrick this week. I'm not gonna lie. He's a guy that doesn't get into a lot of trouble. And I think you're gonna want to look. You're gonna want to keep it in the fairway. You're gonna want to keep it in the fairway at every fucking course you play. But this week, actually, if you look at the stats, there's a massive differentiation in GIR from the fairway versus from the rough, and that is important shit. So like when people say keep it in the fairway, yeah, it is important. And guess what? Fitzpatrick lives in the fairway, and he hits the ball a fucking mile now too. He's an incredible total driver of the ball. Same with Rahm. And 14.25% ownership for a guy who's won at the US Open, 6 at the Scottish, 21 at the Open. Damn. Finau getting a lot of chalk, which I get. I mean, he models out 4 for me. He's won his last 2 starts, and the 2 starts, his stats were out of this world good. Like gained like 14 or 15 strokes in both of them. Don't think I'm going to play him at that ownership. Zalatoris interests me. I think he's played well the past few weeks on courses that don't really suit him well. Other people I've listened to this week have mentioned that, but it's a very good point. And he finished 8th here last year, and he just always seems to be in it. If this number is real, this is interesting to me. The Cam Young number, and I only say that because yes, it's not as good of a field as, or yes, it's a better field than the last tournament he was in. But everybody was like running to the window, and yeah, he kind of got the carpet pulled and was 22%, rather than I think a lot of people thought I was going to be 30, and then Cantlay ended up being 38, and he pulled away the Cam Young ownership. Cam Young's gone down 900 since the last tournament he finished second at. The tournament before that, he also finished second at. So he's gone down like $1,000 because he was like over 10 in the last tournament where he finished second, and down in ownership as well. And I always just think that's interesting. That to me intrigues me because like I think Cam Young and Zalatoris are very, very, very similar players to one another. And Cam Young is an assassin with his driver, as is Zalatoris, but I want a good total driver of the ball this week. And also what Cam Young does well is everything. Like if you look at his stats, he's incredible around the green. He's pretty solid approach wise. And I mean, I think he's just got immense talent, and he's pretty cheap this week. So yeah, and I'm not even asking him to win necessarily. That's the thing. I always like to think about that, like in terms of who I like to play. Like, if I play either of these guys, like I'm not necessarily asking them to win. I could even have them in as a third person in my lineup in some of these crazy builds that I told you I was going to do this week. But let's hurry up. Let's pick up the pace a little bit. Spieth, I like at 10.12. Hovland, yeah, he played great last at the St. Andrews. He didn't have to hit a single around the green shot. That's been what's murdering that dude recently. So yeah, maybe, but I don't think so. I don't know. We'll see. He's cheap as fuck. So is Morikawa, 87. I think that he's it's too good to like you don't want to be late on Morikawa, and 87 is, I mean, that's dirt cheap for a guy who I think he recently won, what was it called? Oh, the Open. Yeah, that was last year. And what was it before that? Was it 2020? Oh yeah, he won the PGA Championship. So I'm pretty willing to forgive Morikawa, pretty willing to forgive him at 8,700. And yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some, even like some of the balanced sick lineups. Why not start fucking with these 3 guys right here and you could honestly do 4. You could do these 4 guys right here, throw 2 6Ks in the blender, and you got yourself a lineup, and you got yourself 10, 22, 36, 36, 56, 56. Two guys in the 6Ks are going to be like 10% ownership combined. And then you're going to have a 65% lineup, 65% total ownership lineup in a 70,000 person competition this week where you can eat like 90% of chalk and not be duped basically this week. Just something to consider. There will be a few sick lineups like that. Haven't decided which of the guys it'll be, but look, it's going to be this grouping. Lowry interests me. Buying low on him. He also gained a fuck ton of strokes last week, even though he like didn't finish well. He had a weird situation with his jet and his clubs and all that stuff. He ends up making the cut. He has to fly back, charter a jet. I don't know. I'm willing to maybe jump back in on this guy that everybody and their moms wanted to be on earlier this year at a way higher price and way higher ownership. Hideki's intriguing to me. He's always the thing about Hideki is he kills you a lot, but like when he doesn't kill you, he just is perfect. And that's the thing. Like this guy's gonna go out and probably be top 10 or which way you want, but like he's 84. I guess he's priced down a lot, and he's really low ownership projection right now. Wow. I mean, that is very interesting. I can't stop looking at that right now. Actually, I didn't really see that before, like while I was looking at this slate. So I don't know why that didn't pop to me before, but 8,400. Didn't he finish? Not that this is. He finished second here last year. Okay, interesting. I'm gonna jump off Sungjae. He's playing incredibly well. Feel free to play him. There's so many guys in this range. You can make an argument for this is the type of week you can make an argument for every fucking golfer. So if you like believe you're on someone, like don't let me or literally anybody else talk you off. Let me talk you on to a few guys though, or try to. Neiman I like at 9%. Like that is crazy to me, dude. Like 8,100, not like, and this is what I always like to look for. Like it's an investment game, and think of it from the perspective that you're buying shares of these guys. So you're buying shares of Joaquin Neiman Inc. at $8,100, and only 9.5% of the rest of the market is buying those shares. And those shares have a lot of upside. Maybe a lot more upside than a higher owned Billy Horschel, who's 8,200. Watch Billy Ho go out and win this. I actually like Billy Ho, but I don't know if I'll get to him this week. I think there's too much talent around him. But that's just stuff like you want to look at, like wow, this guy's like, and is Neiman even playing bad? He 53rd and a 16th. Like no, I mean he's not playing that well. It's probably part of the reason. He's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, I mean, the price is right on him this week, and the ownership is too. Tom Kim, I'm not. So here's the two schools of thought with Tom Kim this week. I like if Tom Kim hadn't played 1, 2, 3, 4 straight 5 out of 6 weeks on the PGA Tour. He's played 5 out of 6 weeks. He's got. The thing is, like, if you describe like this course, like people have been like the people that I view as smart that have been describing it, like you want to keep the ball in the fairway. Like I think around the green and scrambling is going to be a lot more important than people think. And it's like putting is just I mean, GM Kim's an amazing putter, but the first two parts of that analogy in terms of guys who can keep the ball in the fairway and scramble their asses off, that's Joohyung Kim in his early career. So he's intriguing to me from that perspective. And I mean, he hit some unbelievable long irons, unbelievable 3 irons last week. That was one thing on Sunday where I think a lot of people who were like, oh, he doesn't deserve this, and then saw him hitting some of the 3 irons he was hitting was like, wow, maybe he does. Yeah, he's just, it's interesting that he went down, and I mean, like it makes sense to field stronger this week. But you have a guy who won last week, who a lot of guys really liked last week, who's gone down in price. So obviously, like you think he's going to be chalky. There's been a ton of Twitter everything on him because a lot of people were on him last week, and it'll be interesting to see just like how much ownership he ends up getting. I don't not like him though. I don't. That's why he's red. I just think he's going to be chalk. Homa. 79. Yeah, Henley and Connors. Yeah, I mean, there's a guy who's pretty sharp out there who hopped on this show who likes these guys this week and tends to sway a little ownership, but they're great plays. And this is why they're great plays to me this week. This week, not last week. Sorry for people that played them last week. They're great plays to me this week because they're in the $7,000 range. And yes, that the argument there's yes, they can, I guess, win this tournament, I guess. But what I look for is win equity, and I don't see as much win equity with those guys as a lot of others in golf as general. But what I do see a lot of equity with them in, both of them, is top 10 equity. So if you can get two guys at 7,700, 7,800, 7,600, top 10 upside, there's two guys in your lineup that are top 10. Figure the rest of your lineup out if you really believe that. And I actually think those guys are two guys that could do it. The only problem is you're taking on 28% ownership. So maybe look down to the 6Ks. Get different that way. I mean, you can go bang, bang. I don't want to build lineups for people, but that I get why I like those guys this week a lot more than I did last week, only because the only reason I didn't like them last week because they were in the 9s last week. And they just do that all the time in terms of they're right there. However, that being said, Henley at 9.8 last week was 5th place and probably in the optimal. So he was a good play. But that's the thing. You didn't need him to win at 9.8. But it's different at 9s than it is at 7s. Them at 7s, I think are peppered them. But I don't know. They're easy plays and that's not a bad thing. But I always like Hatton because he always goes a little under owned, but he's going under owned and he's playing really well right now. 3 straight events where they're incredible, or two of them were really good events. And then last week, finished 8th, low owned, low price, and he's trending upward. So that's always interesting. Other thing to think, I always try to think about wow, price down, ownership down, trending up. Well, wouldn't you think price down, ownership down, trending or price down, form up, ownership up, right? Well, it's just stuff like that I like to think about. I like to think about that in my process. So that's interesting to me. And he has a model out as well because but if you look, actually, yeah, look, if you look at the fucking past through, because my model is long term. It's a last 3 tournaments 7th, last 2 tournaments 6th, last tournament 24th, last tournament 24th, he finished 8th. So yeah, Weiss stripes the ball. I like him. I like Riley. I like Riley a lot. If that number is real, man, I really like it. I just think that this is this type of jam of a course. He plays these courses where you need to keep it out of trouble really well. You can say that about a lot of courses and a lot of players, but I think that's the type of guy he is. Seamus, Pendrith, Mito, Keegan, I like. Can't go back to these guys, Kirk, Mitchell, Noren. I don't love the 7K range this week. Maybe I think I've made myself not love it, honestly, just so I can focus on the 6K range. But these are a few names. I like the upper 7s a good amount. And then I like Kirk, Mitchell, Digala, Hadwin, Noren, Steele. I think a lot of people like. Do a lot of people like? Yeah. I think that same guy. He's a sharp guy. Likes him as well. But let's talk about the 6Ks because I think this is the money making range this week. Alex Smalley, 13th last week, 6,800. First year on the PGA Tour, trending in the right direction, 5% ownership. Maybe people think that's chalk. I don't give a fuck. I'll put a 5% guy in my lineup easily. Doesn't matter where he is. To me, I get that he is chalk in the definition of it, but I care less about the 2 times argument to a certain extent when my lineup's total ownership is way it's way below the dupe line and already where it needs to be. I don't need to get too cute. I don't need to play the play the 2-time. Oh, is he twice as likely to win as this guy? Maybe not, but like maybe I think he's a good fucking play, and my total lineup ownership is way below where, like, in a spot where I don't need to even fucking worry about that. So like, why just play that just to play that if I think it's a shit play? You know what I mean? I'd rather play the guy that like 5% ownership isn't going to make or break in terms of like whether or not my lineup's duped or not, or if I create a lot of leverage because I have enough leverage in it anyway. And because I'm stacking with 3 guys in the 6Ks in some of these lineups, I'm not going to have to worry about a goddamn thing. I'm going to be able to play whoever the fuck I want. Okay. Smalley, Woo, both guys popping in the near term, not popping in the long term, which is why they don't rate out well for me. But why I like that for them, for these guys, whereas I wouldn't like it for Denny McCarthy, who's like a newer guy on tour. We don't know if this could continue, right? For the next, let's say this continues for the next whatever, like 70 rounds, they then become way higher, pop way more. Like we don't have that much data on these guys, and they're starting to play well, and they're young, and it's their first year on the tour, and they're 6,800. And the combined ownership between those two guys, if you want to get like cool little young guys stack that I think is pretty decent, 7% owned right there. I mean, that's 7% owned. You can do whatever else fuck you want. Hoagie, I don't not like this week. I just don't know. I'm a big Hoagie guy, actually, which is funny. I was on him when he finished 4th and nobody played him. And now he's ball striking the fuck out of it. Apparently, I mean, now he popped like really hard, but I think he's going to be higher than 4.48%, honestly. But I don't not like him. Rye, I like. Taylor Moore, I like. Who's been playing really well. Look at how he models out over the last 3. Jesus fucking Christ. Maybe I really like Taylor Moore. Troy Merritt, he's a ball striking fucking king. He's 6,700. He's 3% owned. Finished 12th here before. I just think there's a lot of not games down here. Caleb Tarrant seems to be getting a little bit of love because he's playing so fucking well. I don't not like him. I had him highlighted. Putnam's interesting, right? He models that well pretty near term. 27th, 11th in his last 2 starts. He's got a 2nd place and 24th here. Interesting for 6,600. Stu Sink starting to play a little better. I don't know if I'll get to Stu because I think I like Neesmith. I like Neesmith a lot. I just think he's going to play this course well. He models out well for me. List, I don't not like List is, you know what you're going to get with Luke List, but he's just like, you know, you're going to get with Russell Knox, honestly, right above him. They're both ball striking fucking kings. And it's just going to come down to whether or not they can putt. They're both hitting the ball pretty well. Well, Luke List has actually missed a lot of cuts, so that's not true. But you know he's going to be a tee to green, probably king, and it's just going to come down to his putter. And he's dirt cheap, and he's probably a lot got way higher upside than a lot of these other guys. Maybe I just talked myself into him. Lipsky, love him, underpriced in my mind. Yeah, he's just hitting the ball well right now. 37, 27, 6,500. This guy keeps the ball in the string on a fairway typically, and he's incredible out of the rough, which I like. Molnex is interesting because I think he's finished like pretty well here. He's got decent course history, which isn't like the end all. I'm not just gonna play him because of that, but he also finished 121 at the Open and 37th in his last 3 starts. Like he's playing pretty fucking well, and he's cheap. Again, here's my favorite 6K play: Kurt Kitayama. Yeah, 20th, 72nd, 2nd at the Genesis Scottish Open, one of the toughest fields in golf that was. I think he's going to be a guy that plays longer courses well, where you need to drive the ball well. I think he's an incredible driver of the ball. It's young in his career, but I just really, from what I've watched of him, he nails the ball. He nails the ball off the tee. And, he rates out really well for his price for me. So he is the one guy in the 6Ks I'll definitely be playing. Lee Hodges, I'll probably play as well. He pops a lot for me. He's 3 straight made cuts, top 50 finishes, and he doesn't putt that well. And I think I'm going to roll the dice on him too. So that's it for this week. Shorter board. Hopefully we kept it a little condensed this week. I'm trying to get better at keeping these shorter and more to the point, but I have such bad ADHD that a lot of times I end up spewing for longer period of time. Good luck this week. Check the weather out tomorrow. Check out ownership again tomorrow night. And And then yeah, make those start playing around with the lineups, right? Like I'm a believer that you can start playing around with the lineups on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Yes, you want to like wait till Wednesday night where you see all the ownership and stuff like that, but you also want to see what kind of works and what doesn't. So start looking at what you want to do in terms of who you want to stack and how you want to, you know, what chalk you're going to eat, what chalk you're going to fade, and how you're kind of going to kind of construct your lineup under that, you know, threshold of, call it like 85% this week. I mean, you can eat up to 95% this week, in my point of view, and in terms of this formula's point of view, in terms of the likelihood of being duped. So yeah, do all that and keep it under that threshold, and you'll have a shot this week in terms of you know, building a solid lineup. And yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on Twitter, for my 50 listeners. And yeah, good luck this week, everybody. Let's catch one. Come on, let's get a goddamn win before another GPP dub before the end of the year. Like that's an easy thing to do, but let's do it. And if it's not me, hopefully somebody, hopefully one of the good guys in the community gets it. So peace out.